didn't think I was gonna see another sunrise again. This happens every day, twice a day for all of us. I've never really stopped to appreciate it and have actual, real, tangible gratitude for it.
Hi, it's Barry. Welcome to Resonate, Conversations and Life Lessons from Rancho La Puerta. The ranch is lucky to be nestled at the base of this beautiful mountain. It's called Mount Cuchuma. Mount Cuchuma actually straddles the border between California and Mexico. It's considered a sacred place by the Bureau of Land Management. The Kumeyaay people who originally settled this area referred to it as the exalted high place because it's considered a place for spiritual transformation. Our co-founder, Deborah, believes that the success of the ranch is due in part to the magic and protection of Mount Cuchuma. Our guests, many of them, come to the ranch looking for transformation in one form or another. Today's guest, Justin Wren, has had many transitions in his life. He went from being bullied as a child to a champion MMA fighter. He has now transitioned into the space where he fights for people, not against them. Justin's organization, Fight for the Forgotten, has a focus on bringing health, clean water, and land to the Pygmy people in Africa. Justin's journey had many mountains to climb. Join me to learn more about his inspiring story. Welcome, Justin. Thank you for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I love the ranch, Rancho La Puerta, and all the staff and everyone I met. This is incredible.
Your connection to the ranch is you won the Alex Zake Humanitarian Award at iSpa this year. And then you came to the ranch for a few days and I just happened not to be here. So now I'm getting to meet you virtually and I'm super excited to meet you. I know that this is just virtual, but in person I can be quite intimidating. So I threw on a little pink so you don't get too freaked out about it.
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. Because you only weigh 100 pounds more than me. I checked it out. So yeah.
You said the International Spa Association Award. I actually have that on my desk, right by my national championship trophy in wrestling. I've got the Alex Zake Award.
Oh, that's so
cool. Statue.
Yeah.
I've got the little flyer that they had, or the little handouts, and it's got my picture. But what I love about it's got Alex's picture.
That's so cool. And the other trophy is because it's a national championship trophy?
Yeah, national championship trophy in wrestling. Behind me is also a glove I fought in the UFC. There's some pictures of, for those not watching and listening, I've got a picture book of the Pygmy people who I love. That's my second family. I'm sure we'll get into that. My book.
We're definitely getting into that.
Yeah. So, but really, I only have things that are super special to me back there. And there's two things with the Alex Zake Award.
That's very cool. I have a trophy too because my brother was a jock and I was a scholarly type. My mom felt bad for me, so she went and bought me a trophy.
Nice.
It's for nothing really, except that my mom loves me. So it was good.
Was it the Best Son Ever award?
Yeah, it's whatever you want to write on there, Barry. So some people that might be a little naive like I was, you're going to be shocked that I didn't know what MMA stood for. So I looked it up. It's mixed martial arts, right?
Yep.
Which is, it's a combat sport. It kind of combines, it sounds like to me like it's a little bit of everything, kind of like everything goes.
I would say it's a human chess match. It is the Olympic sports of freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling. I was a national champion in Greco-Roman wrestling. It's the Olympic sports of judo, taekwondo. It has Muay Thai kickboxing from Thailand. It's got Brazilian jiu-jitsu, even some Japanese jiu-jitsu in there as well. And so it combines the world's martial arts and puts it into one sport. And you see which ones kind of rise to the top. But in the last decade, it's all been about decade or more, has been about the evolution of the sport. It used to be boxing versus sumo, or wrestling versus taekwondo. And now the guys are very proficient and world-class. They'll have their one or two aspects that they're like some of the best at, but you got to know how to use the offense and defense for it all to, one of the most important things in a fight is a game plan. How are you going to initiate and implement and impose your game plan on them and take away their strengths to fight at your strengths?
I actually watched a match or two or segments of them once I knew I was going to interview you. And I'm wondering, how is it that you are still walking around? It's pretty amazing. Injury wise, it must be.
Probably the spa industry is why I'm still walking around. No, it was a lifelong sport for me. I started at 15 years old wrestling. And thank goodness I had 2 Olympic gold medalists as my high school coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't develop bad habits and bad techniques out the gate. But it was because of them and me not taking a break. Most people would wrestle in the wrestling season. I would have 3 seasons per year. And so I was able to get good quick, learning from the best. And so I would have 70 matches in the high school season, and then another 70 to 100 in the next season, and another 70 to 100 in the next season. So I was getting a ton of matches every year, and they were able to help me. In Texas, I won 10 state championships because there's 3 styles of wrestling. And then out of high school, I went straight to the Olympic Training Center. So I was always surrounded with athletic trainers, champions, people who knew to not just train hard, but train smart. But fighting, you beat up your body a lot. Like I dislocated my elbow. I tore the ulnar collateral ligament. You can't really see the scar because it's covered with a tattoo, but I had something called Tommy John surgery. And then I had knee surgery. I had a left shoulder surgery. So I have 4 anchors in my shoulder for a labrum tear. And so it definitely beats up your body for sure, but it's not really the fight oftentimes that beats you up. It's the training for it, because you're training 2 or 3 times a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And it's a lot.
Yeah, I can't imagine. So I want to go back just a little bit, but what gets a 15-year-old interested in fighting and wrestling?
I grew up getting very heavily bullied. And so I think maybe not even the casual fan, but to the people on the outside that might not know a lot about it, could assume maybe the fighters were the bullies in school, right? But actually, there's 3.4 million kids in martial arts in the United States, and about half of them found martial arts because they were bullied. And so I was one of those. I sat at the lunch table by myself, got pelted in the back of the head with chocolate milk spit wads, food, or fist whenever kids would walk by. And I just remember there was this one moment where I was invited to my middle school crush's birthday party, and I was so stoked to go. I got an invitation, and I looked at it, and it was a winner gets a prize. It was going to be a Dr. Pepper gumball machine, and in Texas, the Dr. Pepper, some reasons in our culture, her dad worked there, so we were going to get Dr. Pepper flavored gumballs in the gumball machine. So everyone was excited about it. And then it was a costume contest. That's how you won the prize. So people were going as Avengers and Marvel characters and whatever else, Batman, Superman. Looking at me now and having been named the Viking in the UFC, I probably should have gone as Thor. I didn't, and could have, but I knew she loved Optimus Prime from Transformers. So I wanted to transform into him. And I used Dr. Pepper cardboard boxes to do that, like a 24 pack on my head and 12 packs on my arms.
Wow.
I had a chest plate, I guess you'd call it, and a shield and a sword. My mom helped me with the costume, and she's like, Jennifer's gonna love this. And whenever I got to the party, the door opens and I'm hit with flashes of light, and my eyes are adjusting, but I'm hearing the sound of laughter. And whenever I realize, I look out, nobody's dressed up, it's only me. And I guess I could say my middle school crush crushed me, biggest crush I had from elementary, middle school, high school. She said, I can't believe you thought you were good enough to come to my party. Another kid next to her named Tyler said, what did he say? He said, you're worthless. And at 13 years old, you believe the things people say about you. So I felt worthless. I thought I was worthless. And my notorious middle school bully from 3rd grade to 8th grade shared my name. His name was Justin. He said, you should just kill yourself. I don't know that I've shared this side of it really publicly, but all of us at that party had attended a wake or a memorial service of a child or a kid in our class, right, a peer, and the year before. And he had taken his own life. So I think it struck me at a chord so much deeper because we had all experienced that. And so I literally ran away from that party. I hid behind a Dairy Queen. I threw my costume away. I was hugging my knees, crying and shaking, and basically had a self-talk, I don't know, self-recorder on repeat, their words, right? You're worthless. You're not good enough. You should just kill yourself. Until like one of the employees came out and threw away the trash, and it was closing time. I was like, "Oh, honey, what's going on? Like, come inside. Let's call your mom." And so it was about a month after. That was the first time my parents knew how bad it actually was. They made some sacrifices to get me out of that school and school district. They sent me 67 miles away to be able to wrestle with those Olympic gold medalists. And the reason I chose wrestling was because probably a month after that party, I went to a flea market where they sold a bunch of stolen car radios and tires and just parts, right? Oftentimes there was a lot of junk there, but I stumbled upon a used VHS tape store or market and a table, and they had UFC 2 through 10 or 11. It was missing UFC 1. And I remember I picked up the VHS tapes. You remember VHS tapes?
Of course I do. I am older than you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't look it, so that's good. But I looked at those tapes and I just instantly thought that these guys don't get bullied. Like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. If I could transform into that, maybe I wouldn't be the laughing stock of the party. Maybe I'd actually be invited to the party. And so I started to study the sport and watch it late at night. And when my dad found the hidden VHS tapes under my bed, he wasn't thinking it was MMA fighting. he was thinking it was maybe something a little more X-rated. And he knew from that point. My mom knew from that point that's what I was going to do. And it was a little bit of like finding an outlet, finding a purpose, finding something to focus on.
Looking at you now, I can't imagine why you were bullied, but I think you have a lot of messages since I've been watching, but the bullying is a message that I think I heard you say one time that back before there was so much social media, bullying happened at school and you could escape it when you went home, but it's not like that for kids now.
Yeah, so those pictures that were taken were circulated at school like that very next week, and I was playing hooky so that I didn't have to go face it. I was pretending to be sick, and I think maybe Thursday or Friday, my parents forced me to go back to school, and people were still laughing about it, right? But if it was today's age, those would have instantaneously been on social media and reshared and reposted and hurtful comments left on it. And so, yeah, it's a different world now. And I think mental health is more important than ever, because at least I could escape it. And I still would think about it, but it wasn't like right in front of me, in my pocket, in my face, getting text messages about it. Like, thank God I didn't have that then.
So when you went to the new school, at that point, you started doing wrestling and training?
Yep.
It must have raised your confidence level to a certain extent.
Well, I mean, so I don't want to misspeak, but the 67 miles from my home in Crowley, Texas, which is outside Fort Worth, they sent me to Dallas. But before that, for 2 years, they sent me to another private school, and I was the only wrestler at the school. And so for 2 years, I was called derogatory homosexual slang or words. You're a F this because you're sweaty and rolling around with boys. It wasn't like a big sport in Texas yet. And so I was being picked on for that, even though I won a state championship my sophomore year and actually freshman year. And then I ended up beating the guy who was coached by the 2 Olympic gold medalists, Kenny Munday, Kendall Cross, who became my coaches. After I beat him, they were like, you got to come to our school, and he's graduating. You just won. We'll have 2 full years with you. And that gave me so much hope, because like these guys saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I thought it was a fluke that I won. And in some ways it kind of was. And then they decided they would take me under their wing and shape me, mold me, pour into my life, be these mentors and father figures and good examples of like what it takes to go from not much to like something. You know, I didn't feel like much. I didn't feel like anything.
You won in 2006 for the first time. Is that correct?
MMA,
On a professional level?
Yeah. And I graduated high school in 2005.
Wow. So were you like one of the youngest people ever?
I was the youngest, at least at the time, I was the youngest heavyweight professional fighter, at least in our country, but I think in many countries. So a lot of guys wouldn't jump straight to pro, and I didn't ever have an amateur fight. So my first two fights, the first three fights were honestly happenstance or divine intervention or, fate, because I was supposed to coach the first two fights. And one time I got off a plane to go to the weigh-ins, and my fighter who was coaching, I was in his corner, had such a bad staph infection that he couldn't fight in his quad, and it was in his femur bone. And so they selected me to go to the weigh-ins, tell him that he can't fight. And when I got there, his opponent heard the news and started talking a ton of trash. And he was a heavyweight. And he was saying, oh, he just ended up in the hospital one night early. I was going to send him there anyways. And then the promoter had seen me wrestle and said, hey, I've seen you wrestle. You were the Texan that beat the Oklahoma kids. You're living at the Olympic Training Center. I followed your career. Would you want to take this fight? And I was like, what? Like, I've never worn MMA gloves. What are you talking about? Right. And he's like, I'm going to pay you. And I go, yes, I'll do it.
And then I'll do it.
Yeah. So I stepped on the scales. We faced off, and then I fought the next night. It was about a minute and a half. Next time I was coaching again. My guy had a flu or a fever of 102. He's like, do you want this fight? I go, sure. So I went to the weigh-ins knowing I was going to step on the scale. Third fight, I was in the crowd. This is not allowed anymore. But I was in the crowd. I was about 2.5 beers in to my evening, so a little bit of liquid courage. The promoter, the promoter steps in the cage about second or third fight in, says, hey, the co-main event is canceled. We can't find the opponent. They weighed in, they faced off, they agreed to it, they signed the contracts. We apologize. You can have your money back or credit for next fight. It's not good for fight business. So the people start booing and cussing. And my friend looks at me and, well, actually, because the heavyweight grabbed the microphone and said, I came here to fight tonight. If there's anyone over 206 pounds that has any amateur or professional MMA experience, stand up, raise your hand. Let's give the crowd a show. And I look at my buddy, he goes, uh-oh. And I go, have you ever been a corner man before? He goes, no, what are you thinking? And I shrug and chug. I finished that third beer. And then I went in there and we faced off, and I had to go to the back locker room, or at least backstage. And I had to fight a boil and bite mouthpiece and throw in a coffee pot. I had to borrow a pair of fight shorts. I was wearing jeans and boots. So the crowd didn't know what was going to happen. Is this going to be a massacre? Like, who's this hillbilly guy that stood up and raised his hand? Half the crowd was for him, half the crowd was for me. And then when I walked out, I tried to get past the referee or the refs who do a cup check. And they're like, kid, you got to go put one on. So I had to go to the back, find a light heavyweight who had fought 3 full rounds in his fight. It was a barn burner, which means like he was sweaty as all could be. So I had to wear a sweaty jock. Sorry, I don't think this is what's normally probably on this podcast.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's real.
But I think that might be why I wanted to get out of that sweaty jock really fast. That was my shortest fight I'd ever had. And it was fun. That threw me into it. That actually kind of put me on the radar with the UFC. They started talking to me then. I got on a reality TV show, The Ultimate Fighter. But the problem was I didn't share that before I ever had one of those fights was I had an injury in wrestling where I broke, dislocated, tore my ulnar collateral ligament. I mentioned that earlier, but in 2005, this was way before we knew as much about Oxycontin as we do now and how dangerous it is. And I got hooked. I got sucked in. I needed it for the pain for a season, but I had 3 different doctors giving me 90, 120, 120, that per month. And so virtually an unlimited supply until the addiction and tolerance catches up with that, with no real oversight. And the at least idea being planted in my mind, it's non-addictive or it's the least addictive, it's safe, to where whenever I try to stop, I couldn't because the withdrawals were so bad. I wouldn't wish withdrawals on my worst enemy. And it was really hard. So I started my fighting career as an addict. And for a little while, I could get away with it. Eventually, I kicked off the best fight team in the world. It was a vote of 34-1. The team got together early before training. I walk in, everyone's looking at me different. My coach pulls me in the room and is like, hey, we just had a vote. I was the only one. This guy's name is Trevor Whitman. He is a Hall of Fame coach. He's many world champions. And he's like, go get some help. You need to get some help.
So it was ruining your boxing, your career, your fighting career? the addiction?
Yeah, I would say it was ruining my career because I couldn't show up for them. I couldn't show up for myself. And I wasn't all the way there with it, right? Like,
Right.
if you think about fighting, you need your wits about you. And I was doing good. I was winning. So I had an excuse. And win or lose, I had an excuse to use, though, and use more.
Right.
And I would try to sober up 6 weeks before a fight, and could do it sometimes, but withdrawals were tough to train through. I would sober up 3 weeks before, a week before, 3 days before, and then I was using day of.
So I also read that you had, I don't know how open you would talk about it, but I think you've talked about having suicide attempts before.
2 of them.
1 or 2. So it's it's kind of, someone who's winning as a national champion, you would think, why would someone get to that point? Was it the addiction, do you think?
I think it was both. I think it was unfulfilled purpose, or not feeling like I had one. I mean, I would fight, I'd win, I'd get my hand raised. And sometimes, occasionally, like, people might be chanting my name. You're surrounded by all these people, but you feel so alone, under the big bright lights. And then I would also say the addiction felt like there's a choke called a rear naked choke in fighting. And it's where a guy gets on your back, person, man or woman gets on your back and throws in their hooks. And basically they have your legs and your arms pinned down. Your only chance is to have your 2 hands to fight their 1 hand. If they get a body triangle on you, basically that's pinning one of your arms down. Only once or twice in the history of the sport has someone ever had both their arms pinned to where they can't fight off the choke at all. That's what addiction felt like to me, all day, every day. And it got to a point to where it was absolutely joyless, where I didn't want to do it, but I couldn't help to do it. I took a one-way trip down to Mexico, to the Tulum area, and with no ticket booked back. And I thought, it didn't make a lot of sense, but there was 2 pilots and the flight attendants and me on this flight. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is it just me on this flight? That's weird. I got a beachfront property and I just knew this is where I'm going to do it. And I took basically 80 Oxycontin, which is close to 3 prescription bottles. I took 5 of the strongest Xanax on the market, which I think is equivalent to like 20 of the normal doses. I drank a handle of tequila. What's a handle? I think that's like a half gallon or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pretend I don't drink, but yeah.
Sure, yeah. No, it's fine for people that can. I can't.
Yeah.
And so I did that at about noon, and I woke up the next day somehow. Let me frame it in a different way. When I did all that and put that all into my system, my motor skills started to disappear, to slow, to go numb, to me being paralyzed. So I sat back on this bed and I just fell back. And I knew I was just waiting to die, and I was okay with it. And everything started getting darker and closing in like tunnel vision, and I was getting cold, and then I couldn't feel anything. And when I fell asleep, I thought, I'm done. And I'd come to terms with it. I resigned to it, and I was all right with that, which is weird because now I could never, like, that's not how I'm going to go. Like, I'm here to stay. Right. I'm not going out that way. No. But when I woke up the next morning, it was to a gasp. It was, and this thought of, and sorry to cuss, but it was, holy shit, I'm alive. How the hell
and you're not in heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me a few moments to collect my thoughts, but I had this overwhelming sense of I couldn't jump out of bed. I could stumble out of bed, but stumbling out onto the beach, and it was just this overwhelming sense, get in the water. And so I put my feet in the sand. I'm still in my clothes. I just went and got in the water, and I knelt down in the ocean, in the sea. And it was about 6 a.m. So the sun hadn't come up yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there and the waves are kind of pushing me back. And every wave was like another wave of shame. It was like my eyes were closed. A wave would kind of push me back a little bit. And I would think, how selfish. Someone was going to find my body. It might not have been family, but someone was going to have to deal with that trauma. And then another wave and more shame. What am I doing to my mom? Another wave, more shame. Like, how can you not be like you even failed at that, right? And so there was a few moments of that, and but my heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest because of all the substances. But I didn't know if it was about to explode or stop or what. But something outside myself, it was a whisper in my soul that was, be grateful for that beating heart in your chest. Mm-hmm. And so my eyes are closed, and I think the thought, I'm grateful for the beating heart in my chest. And then I took a deep breath, and it was, be grateful for that breath in your lungs. And so I took that deep breath again. Okay, I'm grateful for the beating heart in my chest. My eyes are closed, welling up with tears, like a tears dropping down my cheek. I smell the salt water, and then it was, open your eyes. And right when I did, the sun appeared on the horizon. And I watched the most majestic, and I don't use that word for, I don't think anything else except this. I watched the most majestic sunrise of my life. It was like a master painting, or painter being painted right before my eyes. It was the masterpiece. And my jaw was dropped, and I was overwhelmed with this sense of, I didn't think I was going to see another sunrise again. And the thought of, whoa, this happens every day, twice a day for all of us.
Yeah.
And I've never really stopped to appreciate it and have actual, real, like tangible, palatable gratitude for it. And so that was a big pivot point in my life of like, you got to get help, you got to get better, you got to do something more with your life. Like, your life's not about you. How can you contribute? How can you find purpose through service? How can you fight for people? How can you put love and compassion in action?
What year was that?
So it's weird because it was like at 13 years old, at 23 years old, at 33 years old. So it was like these 10-year cycles. And so now the 33, that one was after I'd started Fight for the Forgotten. And that's the one I just talked about. But
right.
Oh, so the planes. Why weren't people on the plane? It was COVID. It was COVID.
Oh.
Yeah. And so it was the last flight out of Dallas, Fort Worth. And it feels weird talking about that one because I feel like I'm already in such a different place, but it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean.
And so I had all these years of good stuff after the first suicide attempt. And then I went through a divorce, and then COVID hit, and then I relapsed. And the relapse felt like it was so inescapable. And it felt like it was so big, I couldn't tell anybody. If I told anybody, I would lose it all, like this new life I started. And that just wasn't true. The addiction was lying to me, saying like, if you tell anyone, if you're honest about this, if you ask for help, it's a sign of weakness. But when I actually talked to my doctor, Dr. Daniel Amen, he's a great man. He's spent a lot of time with me. He's like, dude, whenever I told him, he was like, dude, I felt like I was back at square one, or that I was in the negative, like way further off than I've ever been. He's like, brother, like, progress isn't linear. You have made so much progress. And yes, this is a dip, and it's a big dip, but you're so much better than whenever we actually met, whenever we actually connected. Like, you were so far gone. And he's like, and you've been making this progress. So what you do is you ask for help, you get back at it, you refocus, you love yourself like your life depends on it. Why? Because a guy like you, it actually does. You face it all, you feel it all, because that's where the magic happens. And since then, it's been this massive turning point in my life of like, I don't know, I don't want it to sound like the purpose has a different, it just hits different. The service just hits different. It's not like I'm trying to earn it. It's like, this is my mission, and this is what I do. And this is how I contribute. And it feels like I'm on different footing or different foundation, like deeply rooted.
I'm Kristen. Hello.
I'm Beth. We've been best friends for 36 years.
Yep.
And we've been coming to the ranch. We're always finding a different excuse to come to the ranch. This time it's the fact that this one graduated from her MBA. But I'm a mom with two small kids, and I'm an entrepreneur, and my family is so supportive whenever I want to come to the ranch, because this is what fills my cup. This is what gives me my time to grow. And they know that I'm a better, more centered member of the family when I come home, which is awesome. And doing it with my best friend is just the best.
And Beth told me about the ranch. I came here 9 years ago for the first time. And I'm also a working mom. And I find that coming here really allows me to recalibrate and bring out some things that I know are really important to me to focus on and kind of reboot that so I can, again, be also the best version of myself every day. And
We're already starting to plan our next trip.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast as much as I am. To learn more about our wonderful presenters and exciting weeks coming up at the ranch, go to rancholapuerta.com and check out our events calendar. Make sure to mention the podcast when making your reservation to take advantage of a special offer. Some restrictions may apply. Reviewing your story and reading about you, it seems like you're like have had a lot of amazing signs in your life. I mean, there's a reason that someone wants you on this planet, it feels like. So I did read something about how you started working with the Pygmy people in Africa. I read that you at one point asked God, what do you want me to do with my life?
Yeah.
And then you had a vision, which to me is a pretty amazing sign. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I've started getting more comfortable sharing this, but it's, after that first suicide attempt, I've started to find service, and that started at a children's hospital. A dad invited me to his son's hospital room. He had a traumatic brain injury, and I went there, and it started with that, where I visited there, then I became an official volunteer at the children's hospital. I did some night school, and then it was the Denver Rescue Mission with the homeless, and then it was an inner city at-risk youth group, just volunteering anywhere and everywhere I could. And then I found out volunteering doesn't pay the bills. And it's fun and it's great and it's purposeful. But I wasn't driven by that. But whenever you have like, not an eviction notice, but like a warning, you're like, uh-oh, what am I gonna do? My fight agent offered me basically a golden rope for my financial troubles through an opponent offered up kind of on a silver platter, meaning it was a great matchup. All fights are dangerous, but this was kind of the least dangerous fight I could take. And I stopped fighting for a year to get my life right. And so when I had that vision, I was thinking about this fight that was in Japan. And it's the perfect fight, perfect opportunity. Basically, it was the number one thing on my goals list as a kid. Number 3 was be a national champion wrestler. Number 2 was fight in the UFC. Number 1 was fight at the Saitama Super Arena in Tokyo, Japan, in front of over 100,000 people. Here was the fight. And so in one way, I thought, was this my reward for like straightening out my life for a year or whatever? And then the biggest part of me, though, in my spirit, whatever we want to call it, intuition, was like, not yet, not yet. And so I was frustrated by that. And someone encouraged me to pray about it. I'm like, oh, what, are the clouds going to open up and talk to me? And when I said that prayer, it was just, God, universe, what do you want me to do with my life? I'll do it. Like, what do you want me to do with my life? And then the vision dropped around me. And if anyone's listening to this that has been to the Sphere in Vegas, where U2's playing, or Postcards from Earth, it's like it's all around you, except for the floor. Mine was all around me and in the floor. It felt like I was actually there experiencing it. And it was a visualization that like, I didn't try to conjure up, but I was walking through the forest and I was on this small little footpath, barely wide enough for my feet. I kept walking and I heard drumming. I kept walking and I heard singing, a very distinct, unique, I guess kind of like tribal, indigenous singing. And it was beautiful, but like my curiosity was there. I keep walking and I come into this clearing. And when I did, I saw these twig and leaf dome huts, almost like the that Sarah took me to at Rancho La Puerta. And so there's these dome huts, and I acknowledge, or this man acknowledges me. He's emaciated. You could count all his ribs, and he's coughing, like really coughing. And I knew that he was sick. And I was flooded with, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they face poverty, they're sick, they are oppressed, and they call somebody master, like they're currently enslaved. And I came out of that vision feeling like they felt like identified as forgotten, that's who they call themselves, forgotten by God or forgotten by mankind or the forgotten people. And when I came out of that vision, I felt nuts, man. I felt nuts. I felt like a screw was loose. What happened? If I had some sort of psychedelic, I was 11 months sober. If I had a psychedelic that I could say, I ingested this and then this happened and look at this, but it wasn't. So I was thinking, was that a psychedelic reactivation? Was that a psychotic episode? Like, what was that? And I wrote it down. And 3 days later, I met a guy who was a keynote speaker, and he was sharing his story, and he had lived with, I made an inner vow or promise to myself, I'm not telling anyone. And then I meet this guy who's got this wild story. He lived with the Maasai tribe. He lived with the Vanuatu tribe that invented bungee jumping. He helped Bear Grylls, I think, develop some survival training in Europe. And I'm like, maybe if there's one guy on this earth I could tell, it's this guy. Because I didn't know who they were, where they were, anything like that. And so I almost don't tell him. I get in my buddy's car. He starts the ignition. I go, wait, like something was just pulling at my chest and my heart. I get out, I go, and he's got a line that's died down by this time. And I try to hand him my phone number. And he looks at it and goes, you got something to tell me? Tell me now, I'm here. And I was like, oh, we can do it later. Like, I don't want to, you're probably tired. I don't want to intrude. I don't want to bother you. Like, call me next week or just when you find time. He's like, no, tell me now. So I tell him the vision. And towards the end of it, he smiles and cracks a grin. And he just gave me this look. And I kind of am looking at him like, what? And he goes, his first words out of his mouth are, I know who they are. And I go, what? And he goes, they're the Pygmy people. And I said, who? And he goes, they span across 8 or 9 African nations at the Congo Basin rainforest. And I was like, where? And he said, yeah, they're the Batwa, the Mabuti, the Efe, the Baka, Aka, Bayaka, like the greater people group of the Pygmy people, like in these different groups in the forest. And I was like, whoa, how do you know that? He goes, because I'm going in 3 weeks. And I said, what? He goes, you're coming with me. And I had not talked to this guy except for that. And he's like, you're coming with me. A guy that listens to the signs and stuff. And instead of getting in my friend's vehicle, I got in his truck. He drove me to his house. And he's telling me that his wife asked for a sign. That the day I had the vision, the rebels took over the airport. It's a 1 million person city. Terrible things were happening. I don't need to go into all those details, but some brutal stuff was happening. And so the day after that, the US State Department said, no one for any reason go. The day after that, his team he was taking all canceled their trips. They were husbands, they were fathers, their wives weren't letting them go. So he goes, you tell my wife, and if she says we're going, we're going. And I was like, wait, what? No, I don't want to tell her. And can we postpone it? Can we do it later? And so when we got there, she's pregnant. Her name's Jess. This is Caleb and Jess. And Jess is pregnant. They have a toddler running around. And I feel like I can't tell her. And he pulls it out of me. I tell her. And her response was, looked at Caleb, looked at me, looked at Caleb, and says, you got to take this guy. And I'm just like, whoa. So I guess the day we met or day before we met, she said, you're not going alone. Like, if you don't get a sign, you're canceling your trip too. And so I still try to say, can we go when the US State Department says it's okay? But they turned into kind of, I guess, life coaches where they said, if you don't go, you'll never know. You'll always wonder what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened. And that really drew me in to be like, okay, I'm either crazy or I'm not. And it's okay if other people think I'm crazy, but I need either confirmation or I'm just going to go and it's an experience or, whatever. But I had the offer for that other fight. It's like, what are you going to do? You going to take the dream fight or are you going to potentially start a new fight? Like, am I going to fight against people or am I going to fight for people? And it was this pivotal decision moment in my life where when I went, man, if I can at least sum it up, it took a long time to get there. We're deep in the rainforest, in the Congo Basin rainforest. We take flights with one pilot and us. We land on a grass runway. We take a truck for 6 hours. We sleep in these mud huts. We take motorcycles through the rainforest. We get to the river. We take these dugout canoes that were not big pygmy sized. They were like, smaller canoes that were almost taking on water. By the way, they named me the Big Pygmy. That's my name there. Is FAO.
Isn't that your wrestling name?
Yep, that's my social media name. Yep, and my fight name. So that's how they announced me. But we go across this river that has crocodiles and hippos that we can see in the distance. And I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? And then we're walking down this little footpath and we're clearing vines and thickets out of the way. And as we are walking, we hear drumming. And we keep walking and we are singing. And we keep walking. We come into a clearing. And the guy that I saw in the vision was there. I could count his ribs. He was coughing. We'd come to learn he has tuberculosis. And I had to take a knee because I was woozy. I was dizzy. It was the biggest deja vu moment that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I wasn't nauseous, but I was just like, whoa, what is happening? Like almost like a martial arts video game where it's like the finish him, Mortal Kombat. Yeah. It's like, I was like, holy smokes, is this really happening? I take a knee and Caleb is crouched over me, grabbing my trap. And he's going, this is your vision. This is your vision. You're standing in your vision. And I was like, what? Because I had told him about it. I told his wife about it. I'd written it down. I had read it. He had read it. We brought his friend Colin with us, our friend. And I had like these two witnesses that like this thing actually happened. And I would say, if I could sum that up, man, over the next 2 weeks, I was so overwhelmed by my own smallness. I was so overwhelmed by the problems they faced and the suffering that they've experienced that I felt like, again, what am I doing here? And Caleb, the second or third to last day, goes, so what are you going to do? I said, what am I going to do? What are you talking about? Like these new people that I'm meeting that I do love, their culture, their society, the way they love each other, the way they've invited us in and are letting us hang out and experience life with them and break bread. And I'm like, it's amazing, but they're asking for real stuff, man. Like land, water, food, freedom, housing, education, healthcare, medicine. I'm like, dude, I've never bought land for myself in my own country. How am I going to do it in another nation? And he goes, you're standing in your vision right now. And I go, I don't know, Caleb, like I need the vision thing. I need another, the visual I have right now is trying to empty the ocean with an eyedropper. And does that count? Does that matter? Like, would they notice? Would I notice? Would it ever make a difference? Would it make a dent? And man, he snapped me out of it. He was really blunt with me. He said, hey, no, that's the wrong perspective. Every single one of those drops represents a human heart, a person's name, that kid's smile. So does it matter? Yes, every single drop. And I was like, oh, okay. So he said, what more could you need? And I said, I don't know, some sort of confirmation that like something tangible I can do, not land, water, or food, something tangible I could do. And the next day, I think it was when we were leaving, the chief came up to us and said, everyone else calls us the forest people. We call ourselves the forgotten. Use the exact words, forgotten. I got my backpack on, and in the top of my backpack is my journal and the words written down on a yellow legal pad, forgotten, underlined. And I'm like, whoa. And then what he said after that was the tangible thing I could do. It was, my eyes welled up with tears when he said forgotten, but he looked at me and I did connect with him in a not a better, but just a different kind of way than Caleb and Colin. And I asked Caleb, what are you going to do? He goes, I brought you here. That's what I was supposed to do. You had the vision. And he said, we don't have a voice. Can you help us have one? And I knew that from fighting, I had some sort of platform. I knew that from being an American citizen, I had freedom of speech. I knew that I had friends that had podcasts, and I'd already been on TV shows or radio shows. Like that is something I can do. I can tell their story. And so that's where it started, was giving them a voice, sharing their story.
And so you have an organization now, right?
Yeah, it's called Fight for the Forgotten.
Right. And so people can contribute to that and help
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So fightfortheforgotten.org is our website, or fftf.org. They go to the same website, and people can either join our monthly giving club, or they can donate to our current project, which it has grown so much more than what I ever thought possible. Going back the second time, I just decided, what's the goals? 4 goals: live with them for 6 weeks, live with, listen to. So live with, listen to,
Right.
learn from, love them. So that's the 4 goals. Live with them, because I don't want to read about the stat and it go,
Right.
or hear about it and it go in one ear and out the other. I want to live with them so that I can learn from them and ask questions. They make great suggestions. Us collectively collaborate on an effort together. So I thought it was going to be 2 water wells on 20 acres of land. And it turned into, well, now it's over 3,000 acres of land, and it's more than 85 water wells, providing water to more than 52,000 people. We've built 35 family homes, 4 smaller but sustainable farms, gearing up and getting ready to do a bigger one. In July 30th, we are breaking ground on a hospital, a school, a community center, staff houses, guest houses, infrastructure with biodigestible toilets that then protect the water table, that then go out to the farms and become nutrition for the soil or fertilizer. The gas can, if we have enough, produce methane gas for cooking stoves at the school and at the health center. We're gonna have a maternity ward, a pediatric center, or at least rooms, and a dental suite. We've got the deep wells, we've got a water reservoir, we're getting rain catchment, and our model has, I wouldn't say shifted, it has expanded into the original vision that started with the chief drawing with a stick in the dirt: land, water, food, education, healthcare. Like, it's taken us 13 years to get here, but we have some really strong partnerships. And next week I get to ask for our biggest donation ever, which would fund, not all of it, but it would fund 26.5% of all 4 phases, but it would fully fund phase 1. And the quicker we get the rest of the funding, the faster we can get to phase 2 and 3 and 4.
So I was also amazed. I read somewhere that how many children die from unclean water?
It's a couple of million, so a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this is a stat that I know of from at least a few years ago, but it was 3.4 million people die per year of waterborne disease. 2 million are children under the age of 5. When we talk about child mortality, the Pygmy people, this indigenous forest-dwelling tribe of an amazing, incredible, awesome human beings, about half of their children die before the age of 5. And so I've seen two surveys and statistics, one from Congo and one from Uganda. And one says 1 in 2 children die before the age of 5. The other says 6 out of 10. So we're building this health center, and we're going to scale and grow and replicate. We're going to do this proof of concept of a sustainable community. And with this first phase, we're buying land for the second community. And then we're going to, go from Western Uganda on the border of Congo down to Southern Uganda on the border of Rwanda. Then we'll cross over to Rwanda. Then we already have relationships started there and for more than a decade. And then we'll get to Burundi, where we've had relationships established for the last 2 or 3 years. And we're going to, I think, eventually kind of encircle the Congo, which is really hard to invest in infrastructure, like the buildings with all the rebel groups and things like that. But for me, my heart is these indigenous people, the Batwa and the Mabuti and the Efe, and anthropologists call them the oldest or second oldest people group on earth. And they're the first citizens of Africa. Like, they should have some land to call their own. They should be able to hunt and gather, or if they're evicted from the rainforest, they should be able to farm and produce for themselves. They should have sustainable livelihoods, opportunity at education, and to not just survive, but an opportunity to thrive, maybe in a new way. I don't want to take away anything from their culture. We want to document it. We actually have an initiative to get the cultural preservation through video, audio, and written form, their oral storytelling that they can pass down from generations to generations. But in Uganda, for instance, like they're not going to give us any land in the rainforest. They're evicted. They're not allowed to live there. In the name of sustainability, the most sustainable people on earth can't live their traditional way of life. It's wild. In the places we can get back rainforest, we do. In the places we can't, we get it right on the edge of the forest so that they can be as close to their ancestral home as possible.
It's so important to raise awareness to people because people don't know what they don't know. And I think that there's a lot of amazing, compassionate people. I've been learning that a lot lately out there that want to help and want to do stuff to help people. Are you still fighting to shine the light on? Is that still part of what you're doing?
No, I think that's done. I've been playing with it, not playing with it. I've been training, and I got in a car accident, herniated 6 discs in my neck and back, and I tore my shoulder.
You're a dangerous person.
And I just think I have more of an opportunity to impact now I use that as a springboard to get to the lifelong fight.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Can you tell our listeners again what the organization is, how they can get involved if they wish to, or learn more at least?
Absolutely. It's called Fight for the Forgotten, fightfortheforgotten.org, at Fight for the Forgotten on Instagram. We'd love some more followers to see our journey. We've really been trying to document it and show the videos and tell the stories. If people want to sign up for our free newsletter, they can do that at fftf.org or fightfortheforgotten.org. Right. And if they want to join our fight club, that's our monthly givers. And we're looking for people that can do $40 a month or $25 a month, whatever they can. And that's going to help us become sustainable.
Yeah. And so we're going to hopefully get Justin back here to Rancho La Puerta so he can present here. And if he comes to the ranch and you guys want to donate, I will wrestle with Justin for cash for his organization. Because I'm a wiry, tough little guy. So But anyways, thank you so much, Justin. It's so great actually meeting you virtually, and I can't wait to meet you in person. If I'm in Austin visiting my daughter, I'm going to look you up for sure.
Please. I've got a cold plunge and sauna here at the house, and we got beautiful hikes. We're trying to make it a little bit more like Rancho La Puerta at home.
That's great. That's awesome. So thanks for listening in today, everyone. And I will see you next time. And I'll see Justin here at the ranch, hopefully in the future.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks so much, Justin.
Man, this was awesome. It was a treat.
It was a treat for me too. When I found out that I'd be interviewing Justin Wren, I didn't even know what MMA stood for. Of course, now I know it means mixed martial arts. Once I started looking into who is Justin Wren, I realized this man weighs 100 pounds more than me and beats up people for a living. What am I going to have to talk to him about? Boy, was I wrong. Don't judge a book by its cover. Justin is a caring, kind person who wins humanitarian awards. Justin was so open and vulnerable about his struggles, his ups and downs, his struggles with depression, suicide attempts, his triumphs as a national champion, and his finding purpose in life. Justin found his purpose through helping improve the quality of lives of people in Africa. I hope that the ranch improves the quality of our guests, and I believe that it does. My biggest takeaway from my conversation with Justin today is that purpose is everything. Purpose brings us joy. I hope that each of you can find a way to improve the quality of lives of the people around you, even in small ways. Until next time, I'm wishing you health, joy, and purpose.